Herman was worried. He had gotten himself into trouble with the abbot. Grave trouble. And the only way he could escape a grisly end to his life was to uphold his end of the bargain. He had pleaded with the abbot, told him that he would create a grand book as penance for his sins, a book that contained all of heaven and earth's greatest truths. He had written tirelessly as only a man who feared for his own life could, but no book could fulfill this promise. No man could write that much, even if he had a dozen lifetimes. And besides, no book he had ever seen was large enough to contain the sum of all human knowledge. And Herman had only his own lifetime to create the book, and it was what looked to be a short lifetime at that. The time the abbot had given him to complete the book was almost up. In his panic, he began to pray. At first, he prayed to God to forgive him of the sin that had brought down the abbot's wrath. But Herman did not want to die. Soon, his prayers began to beg for help to finish the book. He prayed frantically. He prayed to anyone who would listen. Welcome to the Forgotten Archive. I'm Dr. Perry Neal Harrison, and I'll be your curator and guide as we explore some of the strangest, most surprising, and most controversial written works ever created. Along the way, we'll examine the details that make these artifacts so extraordinary, as well as delve into the fascinating minds of the people and cultures who made these books. But remember, sometimes a book's cover has its own story. Giant-sized texts have been ever present since humans first began to put writing onto papyrus and parchment. Early written texts were, of course, written painstakingly by hand, and could take quite a bit of space to fit entire books of these hand-scribed letters. And these giant-sized texts began before the creation of books. Anyone who has ever seen a Torah scroll knows that these texts can be truly impressive in their size. For instance, one 19th century Torah scroll held in the special collections of Azusa Pacific University is 19 inches tall and an impressive 126 feet long. In many ways, this size is a direct result of the medium of scrolls themselves. Instead, this hugeness is the natural result of rolling up paper or papyrus around central handles. It's just going to take up a lot of space. As a matter of fact, books, in the form we think of them today, called codices, were created as a more compact alternative to scrolls and tablets. But sometimes, creators of books aren't particularly interested in keeping things small. And I'm not talking about your typical doorstopper novels by Stephen King or Charles Dickens. These are books that are truly worthy of the word giant. One series of giant books comes from 18th century Mexico, called New Spain at the time. In the 1710s, a priest created a set of 12 giant-sized scripts for the ceremonies that would take place in convents. And these books are impressive. Each document measures more than 3 feet in length, with parchment, animal skin pages, and titanic wooden covers. Today, 11 of these books are held and are undergoing restoration at the National Autonomous University of Mexico. However, one of the books is still missing. So, keep your eyes open for a meter-long book written in Spanish. We all know how frustrating it can be to be just short of a complete set. Undoubtedly, the most famous giant book is the tome we discussed at the top of our episode, the Codex Gigas, Latin for, what else? The giant book. The book is a complete, hand-scribed copy of the Bible, as well as a number of other non-canonical and historical religious works. Complete Bibles, even without the additional text, were, by the nature of the amount of parchment and vellum pages they required, quite large and often richly ornamented. However, weighing it at 165 pounds and measuring 3 feet tall, 20 inches wide, and nearly 9 inches thick, the Codex Gigas more than lives up to its name. The book itself is made of 310 vellum leaves, more than 1,500 square feet of material, between covers made of wood and leather. The book is colorfully illuminated throughout, with beautiful gold, red, and green illustrations and letters. If you've not seen this book, I encourage you to take a moment to look for yourselves through your favorite search engine. It's truly a sight to behold. The book resides today in the National Library of Sweden. However, more than anything else, it is the image inscribed on leaf 210 and the tale surrounding the book's creation that has led to its infamy. According to legend, Herman, a resident of a Benedictine monastery in what is now the present-day Czech village of Krast, somehow ran afoul of his presiding abbot. Faced with the possibility that he could be walled up as a punishment for his unspecified transgression, Herman offered to create a wondrous book containing the whole of human knowledge as a ransom for his life. In some versions of the tale, he is given a year to complete the book, in others only a day. Yet, what both accounts make clear is that Herman was unable to finish his task in time, and, in his desperation, he sold his mortal soul to Satan himself for help in making the book. In return for his soul, the devil created the Codex Gigas, a behemoth Bible that, on its 210th leaf, bore a 20-inch tall illustration of his horned and forked-tongued likeness. It is this image and this legend that has caused the book to be known by its alternative name, the Devil's Bible. In reality, it is unlikely that the book was even made in what is now Krast. The poor monastery simply would not have had the resources to produce a book of such gargantuan size. Even less likely is that the book is the handiwork of Satan himself. While the illuminated devil is certainly striking, illustrations of demon and the devil himself were actually quite common in medieval manuscripts. Satan was often depicted as pitch black or dark green rather than the familiar red, and one of the favorite artistic subjects was the devil's temptation of Eve in the Garden of Eden. It seems that putting a face to the adversary was intensely important to these Christians. While giant-sized books are most closely associated with the Middle Ages and the 18th century, the next work we will discuss was made much later. In 1928, Los Angeles resident Louis Wanai began a gargantuan task. And I truly mean gargantuan, in both the scope of Wanai's project and its literal size. Over the course of 2 years, Wanai used a homemade printing press to, letter by letter, create a Bible. And the apparatus he made is truly spectacular. Think of it as a giant wheel with rubber stamps of every letter of the alphabet and every punctuation mark along its edge. Louis would turn the wheel, push the device down to imprint the letter onto the page, then turn the wheel to the next letter and do it again. He repeated this process for the entire King James Version of the Bible. It's a process that truly needs to be seen to be appreciated, and I've included a link to Wanai operating the machine in the show notes of today's episode. Ultimately, it took 8,700 hours and $10,000. That's nearly $180,000 in 2023 money. But Wanai finished printing his 8,048-page Bible in 1930. And in the end, Wanai had created something extraordinary. The world's largest Bible. A book that, quite simply, dwarfs the Codex Gigas and every other giant-sized book we have discussed today. The book stands 43.5 inches tall. When opened, the book is 98 inches wide, and when closed, the spine is 34 inches, just shy of 3 feet thick. All in all, the book weighs more than 1,000 pounds. In fact, the book is so heavy that it was designed to be broken into 31 pieces to help move it, and as we'll see in a moment, moved it was. Wanai, ever the evangelist, created his behemoth of a Bible for a purpose, to generate interest in Christian scripture. And, in many ways, it worked. While it took a few years to find a buyer, when I sold the book to the Rosen Heights Church of Christ in Fort Worth, Texas. In 1956, Rosen Heights donated the book to Abilene Christian University in Abilene, Texas, where generations of students have flocked to see the world's largest Bible. Abilene Christian, in turn, has loaned the book off to museums and touring exhibits on quite a few occasions. But, at the time of this recording, the Wenai Bible is on display in the special collections at Abilene Christian University's Brown Library, where I had the privilege of viewing it just recently. Yes, 82 years after it was created, people are still talking about Louis Wenai's Bible. Anyone who remembers the time when DVDs and Blu-rays were new can also remember the special edition craze that saw countless movies claim to have one-of-a-kind disc cases, like metal boxes and truly extraordinary slipcovers. As humans, giant-sized books show that we have always been drawn to the larger-than-life achievements that take things we see every day and instill a bit of the novelty of the new into them. And these books are just that. In their form and the stories that surround them, they are larger than life.
Thanks for joining us today on The Forgotten Archive. If you've enjoyed yourself, head over to theforgottenarchive.com or anchor.fm/The Forgotten Archive and click the follow button. You can also like this show on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook by searching The Forgotten Archive. Original music for this podcast is by Trip Page. You can find his music on Spotify by searching for Trip Page. That's Trip with 2 P's. I'm Landis Hosterman, and thanks for listening. Until next time, remember, sometimes a book's cover has its own story.